In 2024, the incoming CEO of Starbucks walked into a store for the first time and said that this company has been run like a manufacturing facility, that stores felt more like a factory floor than a coffee house. 17 years earlier, a different CEO had written an internal memo that said almost the exact same thing, that the stores no longer have the soul of the past. Starbucks today is over 40,000 stores. They do $37 billion in revenue. And yet the largest coffee house chain in human history has had to be rescued from itself twice by two different CEOs 17 years apart who reached an almost identical diagnosis. So by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this keeps happening and why you are at risk of it too, and also how they went through the same playbook to reinvent the company every single time. By the way, my name is Erik, I'm a keynote speaker and author, and I'm on a mission to document 100 case studies of how organizations have reinvented and transformed. In the 1980s, Howard Schultz visited Milan and saw something that didn't exist in America yet, the Italian espresso bar, a social institution where strangers lingered over coffee, where baristas knew regulars by name, and where the counter was a stage. He brought that idea back to Seattle and he called it Starbucks, the third place, a space between home and work where people could feel like they belonged. This concept scaled at an extraordinary pace. Fewer than 1,000 stores in the early 1990s would become more than 13,000 by 2005. So more than 3 new locations opened up every single day for a decade. That pace created a pressure that the company didn't immediately recognize as dangerous. At that volume, every operational decision had to justify itself in terms of speed and cost. So the espresso machine Starbucks had been using, the semi-automatic La Marzocco machines, the kind where the barista's hands were part of the theater, gave way to the Verismo 801. It was automated, fast, and built for throughput. But the Verismo 801 was also very big and tall. And so tall, in fact, that it blocked the line of sight between the barista and the customer. And so the craft disappeared behind the machine. Pre-ground coffee came next, traded for the aroma of freshly ground beans. With the arrival of sandwiches in Starbucks, they were profitable, they were efficient, but they were also heated in a way that would fill the entire room with the smell of cheese instead of coffee. Not one of these decisions was reckless. Each had a business case. Each solved an operational problem. But each one also quietly removed something that couldn't be put on a spreadsheet. The smell, the sightlines, the sense that this particular barista in this particular store was making something specifically for you. Organizational researchers Daniel Leventhal and James March has described this as the myopia of learning. That organizations, through the rational process of optimizing for their current environment, gradually drift from the foundations that made them viable and successful. So every efficiency gain is measurable, but the cumulative loss isn't. And so the loss goes unnoticed until it becomes a crisis. What made the drift possible at Starbucks was distance. Schultz had stepped back as CEO in 2000, and the decisions that followed about the machines and the ingredients and the layouts were made by teams optimizing for what showed up in reports. Nobody was measuring what a regular felt when the barista no longer had the time to look up. The gap between what worked operationally and what mattered experientially grew and grew and grew for 7 years. Within a year, Schultz returned as CEO. 7 years away from the daily operations had given him something the people running the business had lost: the ability to walk into a store and to feel what was missing rather than measure it. And his diagnosis was precise. Starbucks had succeeded so thoroughly at execution that it had optimized out of everything the execution was originally in service of. His first major move was also his most theatrical. On February 26, 2008, Schultz closed all 7,100 US Starbucks stores for the entire Tuesday afternoon. Every location at the same time. 135,000 baristas retrained on the art of pulling a perfect shot of espresso. The company lost a reported $6 million in that single afternoon, but Schultz thought that it was necessary. The following month, at a gathering of 200 senior company leaders, Schultz unveiled the transformation agenda, 7 big moves to rebuild what had been eroded. This included principles like be the undisputed coffee authority, ignite emotional attachment with customers, make each store the heart of a local neighborhood, be a leader in ethical sourcing. And this list was a counter program to every efficiency decision of the previous decade. In practice, it meant changing the machines. Starbucks replaced the Verismo 801 with the Mistrina. It was built with Swiss manufacturer Thermoplan to Schulte's specification to be 4 to 5 inches shorter, small enough that a barista could see the customer again. The counter became a stage once more. The sandwiches also went. Stores were redesigned to feel like local coffee houses rather than chain outlets. 600 underperforming locations were closed. By 2010, the stock had recovered from $7 to $37. And by the time Schultz stepped down again in 2017, Starbucks had added nearly $100 billion in market capitalization. The reinvention worked, the soul came back, and the numbers followed. But then, gradually, the drift began again. The next drift didn't start with a bad decision, it started with a good one. In 2015, while Schultz was still CEO, Starbucks launched mobile ordering. The logic was sound. Customers could order ahead, skip the line, pick up their drink without having to wait. And by the time Kevin Johnson took over as CEO in 2017, mobile orders had grown to 7% of US transactions. Within a few years, this would reshape the business entirely. The problem was that the mobile system had no sequencing. Every order came in, first out, regardless of how long it took to make it. A drip coffee and a 6 modifier TikTok drink entered the same queue. And as social media drove increasingly elaborate customizations with multiple syrups, alternative milks, cold foam, specific temperature requests, baristas stopped making coffee and started doing triage. The handoff counter became a traffic jam, and customers arriving in person saw the crowd and left without ordering. By 2023, drive-thru represented 40% of revenue, mobile another 30%. The menu had expanded to hundreds of items. And at peak hours, baristas were running between stations, filling complex mobile orders with no time to look up from the counter. So the Verismo 801 had blocked the line of sight with its height, but the mobile app had blocked it with its volume. Different tool, same result. Kevin Johnson, who had taken over from Schultz in 2017, was a tech executive. He had run Juniper Networks before joining Starbucks as COO, and so his instinct was to invest in digital, into the mobile app, the loyalty program, the data infrastructure, and he ran the business through dashboards and metrics. What those metrics couldn't capture, though, was what it felt like to stand behind a counter at 8 a.m. on a Monday with 40 mobile orders in the queue and customers arriving in person just behind them. Schultz stepped back in as interim CEO in 2022, warning publicly that mobile ordering needed to be reinvented. The company wasn't ready to move fast enough. And when Brian Niccol, the former CEO of Chipotle, took over in September of 2024, it was recording its first sustained sales decline in years. Niccol's first move was the same one that Schultz had made in 2007. He walked the stores, he talked to baristas. They told him that they needed condiment bars back so that customers could add their own cream and sugar, execute on these simple tasks that were consuming time that the baristas didn't have. He talked to customers who told him that they missed comfortable seating and baristas who recognized their faces. His diagnosis, in his own words, was, "We got really focused on trying to be efficient and running it like a manufacturing facility, as opposed to recognizing this is actually a customer service experience." His response ran the same playbook Schultz had written 16 years earlier. He bought orders to the mobile system. He slashed the menu by 30%. He closed 627 underperforming stores. He invested more than $500 million in staffing so baristas had the time to look up. Condiment bars were returned. Ceramic mugs came back for the in-store customers. And he handed every barista a Sharpie and told them to write something personal on every cup. In Q1 of 2026, global same-store sales are up at 4%. US transaction growth is positive for the first time in 8 quarters. It's the same disease, but also the same remedy, the same playbook, 17 years apart. Anyone building something right now is somewhere in this arc. The tools that make you faster and more scalable are often the same tools that make you unrecognizable to the people who chose you first. The drift doesn't happen through carelessness. It happens through good decisions made rationally in the direction of efficiency until what you've built is only legible in terms of what it produces. And the reason people came in the first place has quietly left the building. In 2008, Schultz closed 7,100 stores and retrained 135,000 baristas on the art of espresso. In 2025, Nichols slashed the menu, brought back ceramic mugs, and told the baristas to pick up a Sharpie. 2 leaders, 2 decades, same memo, same fix. Always remember that in the pursuit of efficiency, you can optimize the humanity out of anything. And especially in the age of AI, this is more true than ever.